officials confirmed one of the 3 people shot and killed was rapper King Von from Chicago, who was here last night with friends.
Yeah, I just keep King Von alive, man. Don't let him die just because he dead don't mean he dead.
Davon Daquan Bennett, more likely known as King Von, was born on August 9, 1994 in Chicago, Illinois. Little did anyone know he would face a first-degree murder charge, go on to beat it, become a rap sensation in 2018, then die just 2 years later. But we'll get more into that later. Growing up, Von's life was hard. However, he would say that his life was normal for the area that he grew up in, which was O Block, and not as bad as some others. He was mostly raised by his mother and his stepdad. His biological father, for the most part of his life, was in jail, and when he did get out shortly after, he was killed. At the time, Von was only 11 years old. It would also be around this time that he would start getting involved in the streets, and due to him being from O Block, he would become a BD, or Black Disciple. It's also around this time he would meet Dirk Derek Banks, also known as Little Dirk. Von would also meet a guy named T-Roy, who would become his best friend and his right-hand man in any shooting. Wherever Von went, T-Roy would be there as well. When King Von was only 12, he would decide to steal a car that he didn't even know how to drive. And when he was caught, due to him being so young, all he had to do was boot camp and go to a youth facility. He would then catch a few more charges as the years went by, one being unlawful possession of a firearm, which he would work out some form of agreement to make it not appear on his record once he turned 18. However, this would just be the start of Von's criminal history, and he wouldn't just be able to get some of these things scrubbed off of his record. And that brings us to the year 2011. The year is 2011. Chief Keef would just release his first song, Bang, and start getting a buzz around his city, and King Von would find himself in jail at the time. He would find out that his close friend Odie Perry had just died. This would have a severe impact not only on Von, but Wick City as a whole, so much to a point that it would be called O Block in Odie Perry's honor. This would also be the first death that O Block would suffer, rising the tensions between O Block and STLEBT, a GD set. Odie's death was also most likely revenge for the 15-year-old STLEBT member Tuka, who was shot and killed at a bus stop. At the time, Odie was the supposed shooter, and today it is still not known for certain that he was the shooter, but just know the reason he was killed was because he was the supposed shooter of Tuka. Just a few months after Odie Perry's death, King Von's friend Patum would be killed as well. This was also a very hard-hitting death to O Block, not only because it was so close to Odie Perry's death, but also because Patum was a very highly respected shooter and prominent figure in O Block. Then, on February 16th, tragedy struck once again. His friend Sherrod would be shot in the head and rushed to the hospital in very critical condition, then died 4 days later. This also happened while King Von was in jail, so now he has lost 3 friends in around 3 months while he was in jail, and it went in there. His next friend to be killed may have affected him the most. His friend White White would be killed on King Von's birthday. At the time, Von was inside a gas station getting some items while White White was outside waiting on him, when randomly Von would hear gunshots. After, Von ran out and saw a lot of people standing over White White. Then Von would rush towards him and see that he was shot once and didn't seem to be in critical condition. So at the time, Von was thinking that White White would be fine. However, that would not be the case, and White White would die at the scene. Seeing all these people die around him was very traumatic, especially for someone so young. He was only 17 at the time. However, this would only make Von go harder in the streets, and make him really want to get revenge for his dead friends, who would constantly be mocked on social media platforms like Twitter by his ops. One of those people who would constantly diss his friends was K.I. K.I. was a female assassin from STLEBT who was close to Tuka and other prominent figures such as FBG Duck and Wooski. Von and K.I. would first meet on a train, where King Von would proceed to fight K.I. and beat her up. After, Von would go to social media to diss her. This would then start a constant back and forth between them, where Von would eventually begin to DM K.I. on Twitter, attempting to flirt with her on multiple occasions, but K.I. would take it up as him just trying to set her up, which he was most likely, but you could tell that he did have a respect for K.I. since she was female and was really about the gang life. However, she was still a rival gang member, and on Friday, April 11th, King Von would kill K.I. K.I. would be sitting on a porch with 2 others, one being FBG Butter and the other one unknown, when a man in a gray hoodie and blue jeans would pull up and start shooting, hitting K.I. 9 times and injuring FBG Butter and shooting the other one in the leg. Right after the shooting, K.I. would be taken to the hospital and be pronounced dead at 5:45, 2 hours after the shooting. The other 2 would be completely fine. King Von would later be investigated after some eyewitnesses would positively identify him, but not enough physical evidence was found to take him to trial.
Cause we used to be talking on the phone. Like, that's somebody, like, say somebody you DM and talking to. And then one day they just gone. Now you like, damn, who the I'm gonna talk to now?
His name is Davon Bennett, AKA King Von. He's been on the streets for too long. I want him off the street today.
On May 29th, 2014, Vaughn and another male would go to a party where they would come in contact with two guys that would give Vaughn dirty looks. After noticing this, Vaughn would leave the party and call a guy named Big Mike, saying that he needed some extra muscle so that nobody would mess with him. After, Vaughn and Mike would go to the party, they would shoot the two guys that gave Vaughn dirty looks, and an innocent bystander, Malcolm Stuckey, would be killed for being an eyewitness. They would end up being arrested for the crime on July 24th, 2014, where they would be put into separate rooms for interrogation. At first, Big Mike was not cooperative at all with the police, but at 9:07 p.m., the officer would say, "You better work with us instead of against us," and Big Mike would respond with, "Give me some time to think about it," basically saying that he was open to the idea of snitching on Vaughn. And at 9:42 p.m., they would negotiate and Big Mike would begin snitching on Vaughn, telling them everything. However, it would take 3 years before the case would actually go to trial, and because of this, Vaughn had a lot of time to think and realize what he was going to do whenever he finally got out of jail. And Vaughn would begin writing lyrics and working on his rapping a little bit, as well as getting his GED. It was also in jail he would get his nickname Grandson, due to him taking care of an old man who was in his cell, such as pushing him in his wheelchair and reminding him to take out his dentures. Despite Vaughn legitimately trying to better himself in jail, he would be hit with something that would change him forever. On February 14, 2017, Vaughn's best friend T-Roy would be killed, but Vaughn would try not to focus on this and just pay attention to trying to beat his case. Now, back to the court case. So as I said before, Big Mike would snitch on Vaughn and give the police a statement. However, he will never actually testify in court, making his statement basically useless besides like a general idea for what happened. So here is his statement. Vaughn would go to the party where two guys would give Vaughn dirty looks. These two men are Timothy Robinson and Marquise Carpenter. So after they gave Vaughn dirty looks, Vaughn would then call Big Mike, saying he needed more muscle. Then Big Mike would get picked up by a female 10 minutes later. And on the way back to the party, Vaughn would then call one of the partygoers and say to put the children inside of the house. The female driving the car would then drop them off a few blocks away from the house party. When pulling up to the house, Vaughn was in front of Big Mike, and when they eventually got to the house, Big Mike would say he saw Vaughn staring down Robinson for around 10 seconds. Then Robinson would begin running away, and Vaughn would yell at him saying, "What are you running for?" Then Vaughn would run up to the front of the house and start shooting. And when Big Mike also got up to the front of the house, he said he saw a man fall to the ground. I believe he was talking about Stuckey here, but he said that he didn't actually see Vaughn shoot him. He would then go on to say that he saw Vaughn chasing after Robinson, but Vaughn wasn't shooting at him. So Big Mike starts to shoot at Robinson, shooting at him 16 times and hitting him once or twice. Big Mike could tell that he had hit Robinson, and since he was out of ammo, he would run back to the car, still hearing gunshots, supposedly from Vaughn, and then as he turned back, he would say that he saw Vaughn shoot a man on the floor 2 times. Now, despite having this whole statement and a few others from other eyewitnesses, they had little to no actual tangible evidence on Vaughn, and because of this, Vaughn would be acquitted of all charges, while Big Mike would get 28 years in prison. Let's go back a little. While Vaughn was still in jail fighting his case, this would be the first time he would even think about rapping, and he would start writing lyrics in jail. And since he had been longtime friends with Lil Durk, he would reach out to Durk, and Durk would fly Vaughn out to Atlanta, where they would record Vaughn's first song with THF Zoo, Beat That Body, in Durk's basement. In an interview with The Breakfast Club, Durk would say that the song just went crazy, despite Vaughn only rapping for a few months.
So then when you get out, he just tried rapping. And like his first song just like went super crazy.
While Beat That Body did pretty well, it wouldn't compare to the success of Crazy Story. Currently, Crazy Story has 63 million views, and the remix has 86, making 149 million in total, as well as getting a Genius interview for the song. This success skyrocketed Vaughn into the mainstream, giving him opportunities he never thought that he could have. Despite all this, Vaughn still hadn't left the street life completely, and just a few months after the release of Crazy Story on February 5th, King Von and Lil Durk would face an attempted murder charge for the shooting of a man named Alexander Witherspoon and stealing $30K in cash. However, this case is still pending to this day. The only thing that would come out of this is that Vaughn and Lil Durk could have no contact IRL. Even with this little bump in the road, Vaughn would go on to release his first album, Grandson Volume 1, with songs such as Crazy Story Part 1 and 3, as well as What It's Like, to name a few. King Von would continue to release music and stay out of trouble with the law. He just kept grinding, releasing Took Her to the O and Gleesh Place leading up to his next album's release, which would be LeVon James on March 6, 2020, and Took Her to the O would become Von's most popular song to date. It has 135 million views on YouTube and 174 million Spotify plays. It is also in this song that he would mention FBG Duck. He wasn't even dissing on Duck, but Duck would respond to it with his song I'm from 63rd. Here's what Von had to say about it in a No Jumper interview.
Whatever.
So again, like you say, a lot of the stories are hypothetical, but in this one, Took Her to the O, you actually mentioned that a specific rapper from Chicago called a girl 6 times while you were hanging out with her.
Right. It just ran. You see what I'm saying? The shit just be going, man, you know. Shit, it ain't nothing. Shit just ran. It's just that shit sound raw. That shit sound raw, don't it?
Then, a few months after, on August 4th, FBG Duck would be killed in a shopping district. However, Von had no real connection, but Duck's dissing of Von and other O Block members is rumored to be the reason for his death. Back to Von. 2 months after Duck's death, he would release his album, Welcome to O Block, with some of his best songs, such as Armed and Dangerous and Why He Told. However, Von wouldn't be able to see the full success of his album. 1 week after the release of Welcome to O Block on November 6, King Von and his friend Slutty would be killed outside of the Monaco Hookah Lounge. So what had happened is that after an album release party, Von was supposed to go back to a hotel. However, Von wanted to go to an after party at the Monaco Hookah Lounge. So whenever they actually did arrive at the lounge, Von's security checked to make sure that it was safe, and they eventually spot Quando Rondo, someone who Von was actually friends with at first, but it seems that they had some beef over something that no one actually knows for certain. So after hearing that Quando Rondo was there, Von gets out of the car and begins fighting Quando Rondo. However, while doing this, a white car pulls up that none of Von's crew actually knows who it is, and Timothy Leaks comes out with a gun. Timothy Leaks was a part of Quando Rondo's crew, so when he saw Von hitting Quando Rondo, it was on sight. He would then proceed to shoot Von, hitting him twice, once in the leg and once in the torso. There was also a few off-duty officers at the lounge, and after hearing the gunshots, they just began shooting in the general direction of whoever was shooting, killing Slutty. After the shooting had calmed down, a few of Ron's friends would pick him up and put him in the back of a car where he'd be brought to the hospital, and then he would succumb to his injuries during surgery. To this day, King Von's memory still lives on, with his newest album, What It Means to Be King, being released on March 4th, 2022. There's also been multiple murals of him put around Chicago and Atlanta. And now lastly, rest in peace to King Von, Slutty, and everyone else who I mentioned in this video.